and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you didn't believe it before, believe it now. The Vancouver Whitecaps are very much for real. Tonight, a professional performance in the first leg of two. Berhalter gets out the all-important second goal right at the death, and they go back to South Beach, well, Fort Lauderdale next week. 2-0 lead on aggregate. The Whitecaps shut down Lionel Messi and company. Plenty to come here on the post-match show. I am Gareth Wheeler. He is Jordan Wilson. Impressive stuff across the board. I thought it was fitting right at the end of the game. What a challenge from a young 21-year-old player in Idir Ocampo. One of my big question marks coming into tonight's game, how would these young players fare against some vastly experienced players who won just about everything in the game? That was Ocampo's 20th game for the Whitecaps. Tate Johnson on the other side, just his 11th, and they looked right at home. A comfortable performance straight across the board, and a deserved, let's be honest, 2-0 victory here tonight.
Jesper Sørensen says it so much when he speaks about Tate Johnson, but I think it's very applicable as well for Ocampo to play within your means. They didn't do anything extra, but then their confidence grew as the game went on. They were locked in, and when you could shut down Messi, when you could shut down a Jordi Alba, your confidence grows and the game becomes a bit easier for you. But you have to love the desire from these two right back and left back.
All the talk about the star power of Messi, and it's not just him, it's Suarez and Busquets and Alba. I have a four-letter word. Forget about the five-letter word Messi. The four-letter word is team. Because that's how this Whitecaps group has come together. Berhalter, who scored the second goal, told us yesterday that this group off the field, they're incredibly close. They are tight. They play, they fight with one another, they're connected. And the way they go about their business, every single element is on point. It's professional.
You can see it. You can see how much they care, how much they want it. But also for me, when you're going to play Lionel Messi and company into Miami, you have to want it more and you have to be hungry. And they were. For the two goals, and we'll break it down, but there are certain moments in the game where most teams quit or don't make that run or don't track back. They always do, and I think they can always have a chance if that remains to be true with this side.
In the legendary words of John Bon Jovi, oh, we're halfway there. There's still plenty more to come with the second leg to come. Here is your Volkswagen moment of the match. It's the opening goal, number 24, scoring in the 24th minute. Berhalter and Vitae all over this. Some good one-touch football to the far post. And Brian White keeping it tight, 1-0 for the Whitecaps.
I don't think it gets much prettier than that, Wheels. And look at Brian White's movement. Just to check off the shoulder and then go in between the center backs right here. Just to head that one home. Of course, it's a delicious ball. It's on a platter. It's very inviting. But that movement from an informed number 9, that's what seals the deal.
His 10th goal in 15 in all competition. Ooh. Draws level with the great Carl Valentine for 4th overall in Whitecaps club history in terms of goals. Only Ryan Gauld. I mean, a player still looks a little bit away from returning, but if they can come up with another performance next week like this tonight, then look out. Huge save in this game. Your All-State save in the match. We'll go there. Oh, sorry, we're going to show you the second goal, the one that kind of put it on ice. It came late. Sebastian Berhalter, is worth pointing out when this goal was scored, Sorensen took off Vitae and Kubas in the midfield, but it's the substitute that came on after 45 minutes, and Emmanuel Sabi, a real difference maker on this goal, as well as another substitute in Jaden Nelson.
Yeah, and John Conway said it on the call that Jesper Sørensen basically, it was risky to sub on all these players and to have them go and attack. But to really go and chase and really want that second goal and push for it is just showing what this team is all about. Sebastian Berhalter as well, he ran his socks off tonight. And you can see him on the top of the screen right there to the right. Most players, and I've played the central midfielder position before, you might chill, Wheels, and just say, we have numbers in the box. There's 3 players in the box right now. I'm going to oversee. But look how he sprints to that position and finishes that. That is a man that has possessed sheer desire and will to make sure that his team gets into the finals. And that is such an important goal to put them 2-0 up.
In the 85th minute, I can't believe how good Sebastian Berhalter has been this season. Like, you saw glimpses, there's pressure. The son of Greg Berhalter, former U.S. men's national team coach, he's taken his game to another level. him and Ranko Veselinovic are players that Sorensen just can't take off the field right now. I think it says something when Vite and Kubas come off, but the trust in Berhalter to keep that midfield ticking over as a unit.
Yeah, it's the same
goal as well.
It's the same. Ricketts, who's obviously a former Whitecap and is with the Whitecap staff. You ask him about a Berhalter, and you knew that Berhalter had that work ethic, that energy. But, like, he seems faster.
Yeah.
Like, he seems quicker.
Stronger.
He seems stronger. He seems like he wants it more. And he's picking up these pieces and positions in a match now, which just comes from playing. Like, that late arrival, also the goal against Pumas as well. It's about timing. It's about getting a feel for certain things. And we talk about this, the Lampards, the Girard. Once you keep putting yourself in that position, then the game slows down. And you're seeing that with Berhalter and how he approaches things.
He looks the real deal. Let's hear from Berhalter after this. Won a big goal in the 85th minute. Here's what he had to say after the 2-0 victory.
With player of the match, Sebastian Berhalter, you were absolutely immense tonight. I'll get to your individual performance in a second, but how good does this feel to see a team performance like that?
Feels good, you know. Got one more game. You know, we can't get ahead of ourselves. Thank the fans for coming here and making it an incredible atmosphere. But we got one more game, so we got to take care of business.
What was that feeling like tonight to get that goal, the second goal? And I know you had a chance earlier as well where you put your head in your hands.
Yeah, you know, a little disappointed how I took that chance before, but, you know, to have a goal is important to help the team win. You know, all that matters is that we win and advance to the finals.
When you stopped them getting an away goal, what impressed you about your team out of possession?
Just the resilience, the character, the fight to keep going, you know. We talked about this all week. We know we can do this, you know. This is not a surprise to us. Again, going down there, now got to get the result.
You mentioned the crowd. Final question for you on Vancouver tonight. I know they came to see Messi, some of them, but it felt like a real home Whitecaps crowd.
Doesn't matter who they came to see, you know. They're in the building, and as long as they're in the building, we're trying to put on a show, you know. Playing the way we want to play and getting the win, and that's what we did today.
Congratulations. We'll see you in Miami.
Good stuff from Berhalter. I think it's important to mention about just what we experienced here tonight against Messi. The crowd was booing Messi every time he got on the ball. I'm not sure what Messi did to the crowd, but it turned into a game where KJ is right. It really felt like a Whitecaps home game, which was so important, trying to take advantage of that.
Yeah, the atmosphere was electric, and obviously it helped scoring that early goal, the 24th minute. I feel like people understand, oh, Messi might score a hat-trick today, but you start to believe a little bit and kind of unfold it before their eyes. But kudos to Vancouver for really just sticking it out and putting on a heck of a game.
Berhalter was in the running for Gatorade Performer of the Match. We're going to give it to Brian White. I mean, that first goal was such an important goal to score. It wasn't just that. It was his overall play on the night was outstanding, leading the line, Jordan.
Yeah, it's his presence, and only one person can do what he does. He's a nuisance up there. Look, the fact that he holds up the ball and he can just give that little breath of fresh air and that movement in behind. Look at this, Wheels. This is in the beginning of the match. Like, he didn't really slow down. Makes the right decision for the cutback here. Great save from the defender block. But again, I just want to watch this for the strikers at home. Look at that. Just to create that space. Yep. That little second, Wheels, and then head it back across. Everything else is easy, but he does the hard work so well that the final finish comes to him so nice and simple. But he was just class all over the pitch. This one's my favorite. Look, hold up, big body, 3 players around him, wins the ball, doesn't fall, keeps it. And now this allows Vancouver Whitecaps to go the other direction. He was just immense tonight.
He's a genuine threat. You said it. You see so many strikers in world football. They're not sure the runs to make. They're not in the right position to go and really be a threat. I feel that every time Brian White is in the mix, it's because he's getting in the right position. Ryan Gauld oftentimes gets a lot of credit for the superior service he provides, but Brian White gets into those right areas. I just love the intelligence of the move on the goal.
And I totally agree with you, Wheels. There's something that needs to be said, too, with a cohesive group. Because he's making those runs because he knows eventually the ball's going to come. We talked about this is 10 goals now and no assists, and he knows that he's going to be the magic man in that box, but he knows a Vite or Gauld or Ahmed, someone will find him. So he's just making sure he has that split second, that little half a yard of space, and he knows he's going to pounce on that opportunity.
Now it's time for your all-state save in the match. It came in the 36th minute. It's Lionel Messi, but the shot is right at Takaoka. It was that kind of night. Like, no real threat from into Miami. Full credit to the Vancouver Whitecaps. Takaoka made very easy work of that.
Yeah, and his defenders in front of him as well made sure that he didn't have a lot to do tonight, but you still have to be on top of it, right? How many times have we seen Messi from this distance just curl one in and it caress the post and go in the back of the net? So top night from Takaoka, but the defenders as well deserve a lot of credit.
An easy night for Taco. I never thought I didn't think I'd be saying that. Yeah. I shouldn't say never, but I didn't think I'd be saying that tonight.
It was highly unlikely.
Straightforward, just 2 shots on target. That was one of them. A lot of possession for Miami, but they didn't do much with it. Vancouver throughout. The more threatening, the more dangerous side, and I think that 2-0 victory scoreline reflects that as well. Let's go back to BC Place now. We're joined pitch side by Christian Jack. What a night in Vancouver. I mean, there are still some who question how good this Whitecaps team is. I mean, tonight puts an exclamation mark beside the fact that this team is very good, KJ. It was a professional performance from start to finish.
Yeah, we talked about the belief in the pregame show and playing the game rather than the occasion. And of course, the night will be remembered for what was a marvelous atmosphere with, you know, over 50,000 in here and a record attendance for MLS and the Whitecaps modern day era. And many people came here to see, you know, the people who travel from Miami, but they go away with one team at the forefront of their mind, and that's the Vancouver Whitecaps. And I said it to Sebastian Berhalter in the interview, and I'll say it again. I think Vancouver and the crowd deserve all the credit tonight for making it a truly Whitecaps experience. You know, I've had the blessing and privilege to cover Lionel Messi in Copa Americas, World Cups, back to Germany when he had the debuts in the stadium, back in Qatar when he was there for many games. And so many fans and so many times the crowd are in awe of the number 10. There's no awness tonight. In fact, as you mentioned it, they were booing him and they intimidated him a little bit. And, you know, you would say, okay, Messi's not going to get intimidated by a crowd, but there was no fear factor from this time for the Whitecaps and the crowd. It was all about the Vancouver Whitecaps. It was a professional performance, the way they played in midfield. They didn't care about what the name said on the back of a Miami shirt. They played the opposition the way they played a lot of opposition this year, and they dominated the game, and they deserved the lead by 2 goals.
Wheels, I want to just talk to you quickly and ask you a question about Jesper Sørensen and his bravery. I'm going to go to you, you handsome devil. Look at Rios, got subbed off at halftime. You have Ahmed, Kubas, and Vite. Subs on Sabi, Priso, Ngando, and Nelson. Can we talk about Jesper Sørensen and the bravery that it takes to just play these type of players?
I don't think that he cares who's playing. I think he has belief in his players and the system that they play. I think that he believes that some of the parts that he have can provide a more significant output than their opponent. And part of the reason why maybe the awe factor wasn't there for Messi tonight, he was quiet, KJ. Yeah. And I can tell you what the headlines will be already, KJ, coming out of this, is that he didn't like the turf, that the players might have not liked the travel. I think that might be a little bit disrespectful for the Whitecaps. The way they defended as a unit, I thought their game plan and the execution of it was spot on. I think the Whitecaps deserve a ton of credit. The way they approached this game, especially with those 2 young fullbacks across the back line, they look comfortable and composed all night against Messi and Suarez, KJ.
I'm glad you mentioned the fullbacks. You know, I thought Ocampo was terrific. Yeah. Johnson too. But if you go back on the 2-0 goal, the one that's scored by Berhalter, the only move Miami had throughout the night, the only one who really showed any ability to run off the ball with Jordi Alba, and we know what he's like as an international superstar who's won everything for Spain. He showed energy down that left-hand side. He gave Ocampo a game, and Ocampo stepped up. But right before that Berhalter goal, the ball comes over again, and he's there ready for that header. And he clears it with a header, and then the Whitecaps start the transition and go down and get the deserved 2-0 lead. And he didn't get noticed by too many, but I noticed it, and Veselinovic noticed it too because they celebrated after. So the young fullbacks who we asked yesterday of their coach, are they ready? And we talked about it in the pregame with Jesper Sørensen said, we'll find out. Well, we found out tonight that they were more than ready to go out there and compete against them. And you alluded to it. Look, the Whitecaps are the story here. But Inter Miami boarded a flight the day before the game that took 6 hours and 45 minutes to come out here to Vancouver with a 3-hour time change, and they practiced last night at 6 o'clock Pacific time, which was 9 o'clock Eastern. That's a little bit of a run around. There was no intensity about it, and they played that way. I know what time it is in the East. they played that way tonight. It didn't look like they were ready to be prepared for it. We could talk about the turf, but their travel, their lack of time management in that aspect, I think, cost them a little bit as well. It's the night for the Whitecaps, and they'll believe into Miami that you can get some messy magic, and we've seen it before in second legs in continental semifinals before. Of course, they'll fancy the chances, but without that away goal and the way the Whitecaps played tonight, they have to be favorites now to get through to the final.
Well, that's how the Whitecaps played against Monterrey and Pumas. They just happened to come away with draws in those games. So they get just rewards here. There'll be a lot of talk about the midfield as well. The midfielders, I'm including the players off the bench of the Whitecaps, on the balance of it, are better than what Inter Miami offered in the midfield. It goes beyond that to the point that this Inter Miami team can't press, KJ. Like, they won't press because their attacking players simply don't have the legs to lead the line. So I'm looking ahead right now to the second leg of this competition. Miami will want to make it chaotic, but chaotic when they're on the ball. So then it's incumbent for the Whitecaps to kind of nullify that, kind of like they did to start this game tonight. Like, what do you make of this matchup? Because it'll be a very, very different game in the second leg. But I think it's worth pointing out that Miami's kind of more limited in the way that they can approach this.
They are. It's a great point. As I said at halftime, there was no pressing on the defender. Veselinovic's crossfield ball to 50 yards to Ocampo was on every time because Suarez and Messi had no interest in running off the ball. The difference is with Inter Miami, they go from first gear to top gear like that. But tonight, they didn't. On the second leg, they will, because they'll have the legs, they'll have the momentum, and they'll feel like they can do it. But that's what the Whitecaps were ready for tonight. They were ready for that explosive thing out of nothing, and it never came, Jordan. And I think you talk about the midfield. I'd love your viewpoint as a former midfielder in the way that Jesper Sorensen just backed whoever he puts in there. The system, again, the collective, beat out the individual, and that's really the way this sport's supposed to be.
Quickly, I'll say in today's game, you see a lot of players not being disciplined for one moment. That's when the team scored. Everyone was locked in and running back. It wasn't a jog, it was a sprint to place. And that's why he's like, oh, Priso, go on and play. And this type of confidence that when you get from your manager, when you have a set guideline on how your team wants to play and everyone does it, this is what you get from it, Wheels and KJ. You could see that. Everyone was locked in, everyone was disciplined, and that's why they're winning this game and going on to the second leg.
Stay right there, KJ. More to break down. Just a banner night for the Vancouver Whitecaps. A record crowd, the biggest crowd since 1983.
Wow.
You weren't born yet, were you?
I wasn't.
No, I mean, that long.
It wasn't even a thought.
Neither was this guy, Seb Berhalter. Scores a second all-important goal. What a performance. Whitecaps 2, Inter Miami 0 in the first leg of 2 in the semifinal of the Champions Cup.
Are you having any fun? What you getting out of living? Who cares for what you've got if you're not having any fun? Are you having any laughs? Are you getting any loving? If other people do, why can't you have a little fun? And have a little fun.
Canadian soccer fans, we're different. We cheer on the Reds while cheering out our motherlands and each other's lands. Soccer is in our hearts. Our roots are on display. Not to divide, but to unite. Because to us, soccer's more than just a game. It's who we are. From coast to coast to coast, it connects us all. Cheers to us. Cheers to the game.
This isn't your first time flying to show support for your team, but it is the first time you use the wrong kind of paint.
It says here you could try mayonnaise.
WestJet, where your story takes off.
For generations, we've put more goodness in so you get a whole lot more out of every single delicious egg. A lot goes into a little at Burnbrae Farms.
Here we go. Group A or Group B?
2A, 1B.
Allergies, B's.
Next kid.
Hey.
Application is done. Just waiting for the submit window. Whatever happens, I love you.
Oh my gosh, I'm feeling good about this.
They're in. Oh, yes.
What cable internet connection? We're not in.
When the stakes are high, why rely on cable internet?
Switch to TELUS Pure Fiber, Canada's most reliable internet technology.
Dear supporters, you know who you are and where you come from. Local, passionate, undeniably Canadian. You are the soul, heartbeat, substance, community. This is for you with gratitude, made in Canada for all the world to see. So go forth, grow your ranks, and get stuck in.
Saturday, sparks fly in the foothills. The defending champs, Cavalry FC, ruthless, relentless, led by Tommy Wheeldon Jr., the architect of ambition. But here comes Ottawa. New boss, new fire. Diego Mejia's got something to prove and a team ready to rise. History says when these two meet, drama waits till the end. Cavalry FC, Atletico Ottawa. Saturday on TSN and One Soccer.
Will the Whitecaps be able to finish the job next Wednesday night, the first of two Concacaf Champions Cup semifinal ties, as I spit that out? Miami needs to come from 2 goals down against the Whitecaps, Cruz Azul, Tigres. Both games right here on One Soccer. Gareth Wheeler, Jordan Wilson in the One Soccer studio. Christian Jack still with us from BC Place. Look, both sides have MLS games on the weekend. The Caps are away to Minnesota. Inter Miami back home against FC Dallas. This was the 3rd game in a row for Inter Miami playing away from home. Now they get to play back-to-back at home. That will be an advantage. I harken back to the last round of this competition for Miami, KJ. Inter Miami were down a goal to LAFC, and it really was the Lionel Messi show in that second leg. They ended up winning that game 3-1. Messi scored twice. If you're going to say, okay, what's the path to victory for Inter Miami, it's going to have to be the Lionel Messi show all over again. Won't it have to be?
Yeah, no doubt about it. That will be the pressure that Messi is obviously being given again, and he's used to that, by the way. And you know, I think our own Oliver Platt put it really well this week on OST when he says it comes very quickly as well with Messi. You know, you get it's very explosive, and the momentum and the you know, just that drive that he's able to carry a team so often in his career was what the Whitecaps prevented tonight. You know, I heard a fan say that, you know, Messi didn't show up at all last time in Vancouver, and many people would argue that he didn't show up again tonight here. But he will show up in Miami next week, and I guess questions will be whether he will play on Sunday. You know, as I said, Vancouver is a long way away from Miami. They will get on a bus, they will go to the airport tonight, they will go on their charter, and they will fly home, and it's already Friday morning there, you know, and they're supposed to play again on Sunday. So we'll have to see what their lineup is on Sunday. I would question that going forward. If I was MLS, I would say that perhaps it's probably a good idea that these teams playing in a continental semifinal shouldn't necessarily play games on the weekend. But if you're the Whitecaps, you're probably happy. But it'd be interesting to see if Miami do play those players, certainly the likes of Busquets, Suarez, and Messi on Sunday. But next week, I expect it to be a very different team. But the Whitecaps, as I said earlier, without conceding that away goal, which is crucial and very different to what we're used to around Europe now, I think that's a massive storyline here, the fact that Mascherano wanted it and never got his away goal.
Wheels, like, we obviously know Messi is a generational talent, but he has to grow into games. There's things that he needs to find joy. Vancouver Whitecaps nullified that joy today in terms of him getting the ball, making passes where he feels good. Everyone's behind the ball, everyone's committed, and he didn't really, of course he can still have those flash in the pan moments. He can always bring that, but he never really had his stride today, and that is due to Vancouver Whitecaps and their resilience to nullify that. They're all over him.
Well, it's a little bit of a different context as well, playing at home. The refereeing will certainly be something to watch in the second leg. More pressure to make calls. Of course, he came together multiple times with Andreas Kubas here tonight. It's not just Messi. I mean, Suarez was so ineffective that Messi was going to places on the field tonight, KJ, that you don't really see him going, like wide left in awkward areas where he couldn't be a threat. I thought Luis Suarez was really poor. Blackman and Veselinovic did a job on him. So as much as Messi is going to be important, like what about Suarez as well? That was a complete no-show.
Yeah, it wasn't very good. As I said earlier, the whole team, I thought, was really poor and played like the game was on Eastern time on a surface that they weren't very happy with. So, you know, look, a note there about Blackman and Veselinovic. You know, the Whitecaps have worked very, very hard with these two centre-backs, and they are the perfect example now of a group that have been together for the best part of 3 seasons and work really well. Like Veselinovic, I remember when he signed as a teenager, and many people weren't sure whether he had the athleticism, the quality on the ball to play in Major League Soccer. I thought he was fantastic, and Blackman was very good on a yellow card as well. That was not an easy game for him to play. But their organization, the way that they patrolled it, I'm very blessed and lucky to be by the pitch side. And the communication with these players is second to none. They always talk, and when you've got the team that you're playing against like Messi and how tricky they are, and as I said, how they can go, Miami can go from that to nothing is very, very obvious, and they stuck to that the entire night. The devil was in the details. It was always about the details, and their concentration was brilliant all night, I thought.
Before we say goodbye, we should take a look at, or at least discuss, what the Whitecaps have over the course of the next week. They play away from home. I mean, Sorensen has been rotating his squad in this competition and in MLS to the point where you're like, is he getting it right? But every single decision he makes seemingly is coming up in his favor. How does he approach not only the weekend, but next week's game in Miami, Jordan?
So we've been saying, and I've been saying, like, oh, you got to rest certain guys. You're probably seeing Brian White coming in the 60th minute, or maybe even starting a match. Sabby, who didn't start, will probably start. But I like that he's using the 15, 16 and making sure that they're ready for a big performance. They can't take their foot off the gas now. It's been working. Play them.
KJ, final thought for BC Place? Oh, KJ? Might not.
I think he agrees with me. That's
Sorry,
a nice
I missed your question.
Oh, I said final thought from BC Place here
you,
tonight, KJ. Final thought for us.
I mean, yeah. The final thought for me is it was a night for Vancouver. You know, ultimately, Vancouver showed up in a sellout crowd, and the Whitecaps showed up and gave them everything that they needed. So congratulations to the city of Vancouver and the franchise who needed it. A special night. Obviously, many people came here to see Messi. They went home thinking about the Whitecaps.
Christian Jack from BC Place, thank you so much for that. KJ, are you believing Jordan Wilson?
I've always believed.
That is the truth. You're believing. I feel like this team won't get ahead of themselves, though.
No.
They just don't.
We said they needed to puncture the tires. They did that. The second goal gives a bit of insurance. Now you get to relax, enjoy that win for a day or two, and they'll be back to business next week.
I'm a big reference point guy. They did it in Monterrey. They did it in Mexico City against Pumas. These kind of reference points that you latch onto for big games that are upcoming this Wednesday.
Why can't they do it in Fort Lauderdale? Why not?
Why not? On a warm night.
Why not?
In Fort Lauderdale. Like, look, this is going to be a game that goes down in Whitecaps history. The biggest game in recent vintage comes out in their favor. White and Berhalter with the goals. 2-0 is the final in the first leg. On behalf of Jordan and KJ, I'm Wheels. This has been the Concacaf Champions Cup on One Soccer.
This isn't your first time flying to show support for your team, but it is the first time you use the wrong kind of paint.
It says here you could try mayonnaise.
WestJet, where your story takes off.
For too long, we've been told that greatness comes from somewhere else. Sorry, that ends now. We are the Canadian Premier League, proudly built for you and by you across this sovereign land, ready to take on the beautiful game on our terms. We may be young, but give us time and underestimate us at your peril. We'll keep grinding until everyone knows exactly who we are. Rosters filled with homegrowns, Canadian kids who just needed a chance, with dreams as vast as our horizon.